We made this.
Hello and welcome to Pick a Disc, the podcast where someone picks a disc for whatever reason they want to, and then we talk about it. My name's Matt Latham, and this is the start of the 4th year of the podcast. And you're going to hear me say that a couple of times during the course of this interview, that my guest in a second. But yeah, I'm slightly amazed that I've got onto the 4th year. Lots of my favourite TV shows and some of the best TV shows ever had their best seasons in the 4th season. Dexter, Mad Men, Friday Night Lights, The Wire, etc. Yeah, pick a disc. Even though technically this isn't seasons, we're an ongoing series, but because we started in January of 2019, I always see like a new year as like a new refreshed season. So it means that I don't have to remember any appointments or anniversaries or anything like that. But enough about me. The guest we're talking with today is Peter from the Pop Gaze podcast, and known as DJ Polaric as well. And he's brought the album Tango In The Night by Fleetwood Mac. And you know, we talk about all sorts of things in terms of the songs, the background. We mentioned a bit about Fleetwood Mac. We're not going to go too much into detail about the Fleetwood Mac because there's just not enough time to go through that. But it was a great chat and a great album to talk about. So if you like what we do, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Under Pick a Disc. There's a Discord server if you want to join us on that and talk to me and other people in that server. You can do, or you can just send an email at gmail.com. No, pickadisc@gmail.com. It helps if you say the first bit, Matthew. Duh. Anyway, I'm rambling on again, so I guess I just need to go and queue up the interview with Peter about Tango In The Night by Fleetwood Mac. Okay, and this is the part where we start talking. So I never had someone so enthusiastic they start talking before I did in this part before. So that's
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm here introducing it like it's my podcast. I'm sorry about that.
Well, considering who your partner is, I'm pretty sure you've been indoctrinated with the world of podcasts. So
yeah.
So yes, for the uninitiated, Peter is the partner of Mark, who was here, who's my co-host on Shipwrecked and Comatose and a million other podcasts that I've been involved with, as well as coming on here to talk about the Fast of the Land, and it's through him that we're now talking, and you're here to talk about an album that you've picked for us to talk about. So let's just cut to it, Peter. Which is the disc that you've picked for us to talk about today?
The album I've picked for today is Fleetwood Mac, and it is Tango In The Night.
Tango In The Night. From 1987, I believe it is.
It is, yes.
Yes.
That's right. I had to check that as well, because I was literally only 4 years old when this was released.
So, why have you picked Tango In The Night?
Okay, so for most people, the definitive Fleetwood Mac album is Rumours. I personally feel like Tango In The Night it's the production's more polished. It feels like more of a body of work, one body of work, and it feels like they kind of hit their stride after a bit of time in the wilderness. Now, this is 10 years after Rumours came out. They'd already released Tusk and Mirage. Mirage wasn't really a hit. Tusk had done quite well, but I think that was off the back of them still being popular because of their earlier work. And it's got a lot of the songs that are kind of the definitive Fleetwood Mac songs, which we'll go into in a minute, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on Rumours at all, because that's a whole kettle of fish, and I don't want to derail it. But I think, remember, like a couple of years ago when I first started this podcast, I'm going like, oh, I wonder how long it is before someone picks Fleetwood Mac. So it's not gonna be long before someone picks Rumours, and pretty much this is the. I mean, I don't do seasons, but this is the first. This is the first episode of year 4, so technically it's the season 4 opener, for lack of a better word. And so it's taken nearly about 3 years for someone to pick Fleetwood Mac, and it's a different album from the one that I was expecting people to pick. So cheers for that, because I've never listened to Tango the Night before, but I'll get into a bit more of my history in Fleetwood Mac in a second. But so So okay, so you picked Tango in the Night, and you think it's a better body of work. Can you remember the first time that you ever heard of or listened to Fleetwood Mac?
Yes. So I was born in the 80s, and my mum was a child of the late 50s, and she was really into Fleetwood Mac. She had literally a cassette for the car. It had Rumours on one side, it had Tango in the Night on the other, and I just got used to hearing all the Tango in the Night tracks. Really sort of connecting with them. Didn't really know as a kid the history of Fleetwood Mac and what they were, obviously quite famously they had a lot of fallings out when they were in the band and all that. But I didn't really know anything to that. To me, it was just a good pop album. I don't really want to call it a pop album. It feels like part of it's rock, part of it's kind of folky, but with electronic stuff in there. And it's that's when I first got onto it through my mum. My mum's informed a lot of my music tastes, certainly in my earlier years.
Oh, okay. So it was a cassette. Was it? I'm assuming, was it like a recorded cassette?
It was a C90, I believe. Yes.
C90s. yes. That was classic chestnuts and stuff. Yeah. Was it played in the car? Was it like the tape?
It was in the car. It was in the little Austin Metro, I think it was, or whatever car we had. Us being such a rich family to have one of them.
But the so yeah, I think that's not cropped up actually a lot in the podcast so far. The parents and the cassette in the car, where they just leave it on, because I think I might have mentioned this previously, but I know there's two albums that I have memories of that being there. There's I can't remember the name of it, but I did Google the compilation, but there was like a double cassette of like kind of love songs that mum and dad would just like constantly swap the tapes over, and the only songs I remember was, I think there's a song called Freedom for the Stallion and a song called Me and Mrs. Jones, and I can't remember who did them. I remember I found the compilation, I think on Amazon, just to find out, just to ease my curiosity if it existed or not. And then there was that, and it was also Wonderland by Simply Red. So at some point when there's a Matt pick, eventually it might be a Simply Red album that I'm talking about, because I've not heard it in like 20 years. But because of the same thing, because of what the parents was like on a cassette that they flipped over in the car and stuff. And but I actually did the car kind of automatically just switch the cassette over again, so you didn't have to take it out and flip it over?
Yeah. I think we didn't have to. I think it was auto reverse.
Yes. So basically,
it did its magic thing for us. You could play it either.
So they just put the tape in, and because it just flipped the side over, they just never replaced the tape. So that's like
exactly.
So you'd be in the car for about 45 minutes driving while you drive to Maryhill, and you'd be going through a whole kind of side of like love songs, and it'd be the same songs over and over again. But So I'm assuming it was one of the first albums of Fleetwood Mac that you listened to then. I'm assuming it was that or Rumours, but you can't figure out which one was which. Can you remember which one was first, or?
Well, like I say, they were both on one tape, so I was listening to them simultaneously, really. One after the other. I think it was a whole album on each side. I mean, I recognise I've known all the tracks on Tango in the Night since my childhood, and I think that's one of those things, like the music that we listen to in our childhood often informs our taste later on. It's the kind of thing that takes you back. It's the nostalgia. It's this is what my life was like, and
Okay, interesting to say that. I always got an interesting kind of, I like to call it the genealogy or the DNA of someone's taste, how people's like taste evolve and stuff. So what kind of stuff do you kind of listen to now, and how do you think it feels?
Oh, nothing like. The last band I saw live was Steps, and they were amazing. I'm not gonna lie, they were so good. When I was a kid, I got into the Spice Girls. I got into other pop music. I went through an indie phase. We all do. I went through my own, angsty, listening to Stereophonics and whatever, and I quite liked it. I was still like a Thousand Trees and like Stereophonics songs, but I've moved in a much more poppy direction. I think that's kind of the influence of the gay scene and DJing on the gay scene and all that sort of thing. I've sort of had to keep myself updated into what's popular at the time, really.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I think, I think that you can. There's probably a way you could trace Fleetwood Mac to Steps, I think, at some point. Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a cover of Seven Wonders at some point. You never know.
So yeah, interesting side covers. I think so the section of the podcast where I talk about my disclosure, or how much I know of the band and stuff. Fleetwood Mac is a band that's always been there. There's always been there, or at least if you don't know it's Fleetwood Mac, it's been Fleetwood Mac. And for example, for years you just knew them as, and they're just kind of ubiquitous in music and you can't, and yeah. So like, whilst I might not recognise Mick Fleetwood if he walked past me in the street, even though he's twice my height. You'll recognise songs and stuff, and there have been many occasions, particularly while listening to this album, actually, in the lead up to this, and when I've often dipped into either listening to Rumours or the greatest hits, I'm there going, oh, I didn't realise this was a Fleetwood Mac song. So for example, the Cause covered Dreams. And for years, I thought that was a Cause song.
That was the original. That was their song. And the version they released was like the Todd Terry remix as well. So it was like, it had quite a beat behind it, and then a little penny whistle, and you're like, oh, this, having a bit of a bop to it. And then you hear this, and you hear the Fleetwood Mac version, and you're like, what do you mean this song was 20 years older than I thought it was?
Yes, And there's and again, like, I think, was it? I'm going to butcher a name if I get it wrong. Was it Elaine Cassidy did a cover of Songbird? There's a famous cover of Songbird, I think.
Is she called Eva Cassidy?
No, something cast. There's a very well known cover of Songbird, and who was it? I'm gonna live googling.
Eva Cassidy.
Yes, yeah.
Fastest finger first.
Yeah, because I believe it was released after her death, I think. Yeah, because I think that was actually quite well known, and I was like, oh, I didn't realise that was a cover. I think in the early noughties there was a dance version of Everywhere, I think, or a kind of remix of Everywhere, and again, I didn't realise that was a cover. Yeah,
that was, I'm sure that was the Fleetwood Mac version with a few filters and a beat behind it.
Yeah, because I think... Yeah. I feel, if I remember rightly, it was just I think it was just kind of like someone who sounds very similar to the original vocalist, but they just kind of put a few kind of like compression filters onto some of the tracks and made things quieter and louder and stuff, and then up the bass. Yeah. Made it easy to remix and stuff, and but then like. And again, it's just like you got these songs that you probably hear on the radio, or in TV or film. And for example, like when I listened to Rumours, "Don't Stop," I didn't realise it was a Fleetwood Mac song, and I'm like, oh right, yeah, sweet little.
And it was used, I'm sure it was that one that was used in like a Wrigley's chewing gum commercial or something. Don't Stop. I've got a chewing gum commercial in my head. I'm sure there was one of them.
Quite possibly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But yeah, and it's one of those things where like you think, oh, I didn't realise that this was Fleetwood Mac. And the biggie is the theme tune to the TV show Top Gear, as was famously the no, it wasn't Top Gear. It was the F1 on BBC.
BBC Racing, chain, wasn't it? Just the chain. Riff, down. They miss out about 2/3 of the song and then just get straight into that. Yeah, and
like it's because of the way they use it and how I'm going to use the word ubiquitous that came into sports culture, particularly before it moved to Channel 4. But like you'll just hear that down and like one day like your parents will probably just put on the chain, right? And then suddenly you think, oh, is the Formula 1 on? And it's sort of things you just don't realise how much Fleetwood Mac are kind of ingrained into popular culture. They might not be the first band you think of when you think of like the best bands ever. That might be a controversial statement, I don't know, but it's how you perceive it. But they've always been there, and you don't realise it. So
the thing is as well, I mean, they've got 3 different vocalists.
Yes.
So obviously most bands have one front man or one front woman singing their songs. So, you know, Seven Wonders has got a different vocalist to Everywhere's got a different vocalist to Big Love. That's just 3 songs on that's just the first 3 songs of the album.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not always recognisable for that reason, I think, as well.
Yeah, exactly. And again, those 3 voices have come and gone. And there's been, I mean, there are sections of that band where, like, I think Peter Green was in the 60s, where there was like a completely different band. But and as I said to Peter before we started recording, I'm not going to spend too long on Fleetwood Mac, because again, as much as perhaps they're always in the kind of like there, I think people know the people, or the big line, the main famous lineup of Fleetwood Mac and the kind of history and stuff. But if you're one of the 3 people that don't know who they are, I think they're a kind of a British American rock band that was formed in the late 60s, founded by a guitarist called Peter Green, a drummer called Mick Fleetwood, a guitarist called Jeremy Spencer, and just before a bassist called John McVie joined for their self-titled album. And I think their name is just pretty much a combination of John McVie, because I think they called him Mac, and Mick Fleetwood, who have been the 2 consistent members throughout Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, and there are so many different people that have come and gone, but the lineup, the big famous lineup, is the lineup that was on this, is the lineup that was on Rumours, and I think that the albums in between, which is Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Krista McVie, Stevie Nicks, and Lindsey Buckingham. The last 3 are the kind of switch between vocalists, vocal duties, and sometimes they'll have more than one. They'll have like all 3 of them singing. Sometimes it'll just be different 2 and stuff. But it's an interesting mix, and as someone who often quite likes bands with more than one vocalist, it's a treat to like. It's always a treat to suddenly think, oh, someone else is singing. So yeah, and they've also had 1 or 2 little disagreements in the past, anyway, and a lot of that particularly around the recording of Rumours, and then this is 10 years later, they're 10 years older, and things have kind of settled a bit, but a bit, and then they've all did, I think was it Mirage that was before this?
Mirage was the album just before this, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
yeah, and I think at the time, I believe there was a kind of like hiatus of Fleetwood Mac, and all of them were doing kind of solo projects.
Yeah, Stevie Nicks' solo album. Stevie Nicks had 2 very successful solo albums, and one of them kind of overshadowed Mirage, which is why a lot of people believe that's why Mirage wasn't as very successful. People were more interested in Stevie as a solo artist at the time.
Yeah, was that when The Edge of 17 came out, or the song
Edge of 17? Yes.
Yeah. And the only reason I know about that again is because recently the film Edge of 17.
Oh, really?
Annie Steinfeld. Yeah, I didn't realise that was the name of a Stevie Nicks song, and I thought, oh, okay. And I started listening to the Stevie Nicks song, and suddenly I was listening to it, and I was thinking, this sounds so familiar. Why does this sound familiar? And in the back of my head, suddenly something clicked, and it was like, Beyonce, can you handle this? And I did not realise.
Yeah. Bootylicious. That riff at the start, when they sort of they took the riff at the start and kind of turned it into a Michael Jackson song with all the yelps and stuff like that. And when they were Destiny's Child.
Yeah, they're just like everywhere. I can't wait for the day. I'm suddenly hearing a Fleetwood Mac song and suddenly realise that a Slipknot song is suddenly sampled it or something. They're just always there. So in the lead up to this, there's like all these different solo albums, but it appears the band members are kind of able to tolerate each other to the point that they start kind of interacting and kind of work on other people's solo projects. So I believe in the lead up to this, I think John McVie did some work on Stevie Nicks' album, and Lindsey Buckingham, I think, did a few, kind of played on some other albums and stuff. I think Mick Fleetwood wanted to kind of generate a new Fleetwood Mac album at some point. But the interesting bit of this that I find quite interesting, and it kind of leads into the production side of it, because Lindsey Buckingham is listed as a producer next to a Richard Dashut, is that I think originally this was supposed to be a Lindsey Buckingham solo album.
Some of the tracks, I believe he wrote for himself. It was meant to be a solo. It was meant to be a song, and he got convinced by John McVie to fold them into a Fleetwood Mac album. Not all the tracks on this are written by him. They all take turns. Like Stevie Nicks co-wrote Seven Wonders, and that's where you get a lot of variety in terms of lyrical content in there as well.
So I know what you mean in terms of like kind of like the differences and stuff, but it feels like, and I do want to kind of dip into the bit about the behind the scenes stuff, because there's a great article from loudersound.com. I think it was written in 2013, written by Paul Elliott. I think it was Christy McVie. It was Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, and Mick Fleetwood were doing a round of like interviews with each other, and I think this author's he either interviewed them or he's collected all these together and stuff, and it's produced a kind of like a retrospective look back on how it was recorded, and it's an interesting. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's a very interesting kind of like detailed like look back into the kind of recording of it, and like the general idea being is that I think as Buckingham found that it was becoming a Fleetwood Mac album, the tensions between them and the tensions between the bands started flaring up again. Interestingly enough, there was from what they've been talking about, they're saying that because it was recorded at Buckingham's home in Los Angeles and his studio, and whilst he was trying to do a lot more in terms of just to kind of be kind of serious and get this recorded, there's like stories that like Mick Fleetwood and Mick Fleetwood and Christy McVie would just come in like high on cocaine with people that they've just met, and like cause a kind of a really weird atmosphere that Buckingham was really not happy with.
Yeah, Mick Fleetwood in particular was right in the middle of his cocaine addiction, more or less, at the time. So that's believable.
But then there was, but again around the same time as well, Mick Fleetwood also had been declared bankrupt. Stevie Nicks had been treated for drug addiction, so they've got their baggage, to say the least. Anyway,
they're a bit like the rock music ABBA, really, weren't they? With all with all the relationships that were going off. I always compare them to ABBA in that way, anyway.
Yeah, and again, I think because a lot of the tensions between them, romantically, and all the breakups of their relationships, I think were around the Rumours time, which is why Rumours is a fascinating piece of thing where it just basically people are singing songs written by people that they're not particularly like in the moment, and it's just they're singing
songs about themselves that are written about themselves by someone else, or or they've written about someone who's standing beside them on the stage or behind them. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's like, no wonder there was tensions.
and I think a lot of the hype and claim from that album was from that, but then to their credit, to all the band's credit, they never wanted to repeat that, and they've tried not to. And I think one of the things about Tusk, because I've not listened to it, but one of the things I remember reading about Tusk was that they deliberately tried to not make Rumours 2, and they did the same with Mirage. And when they came to do Tango In The Night again, that shadow of that album was still there, and it felt like they said, oh, we don't want to make Rumours 2, even though it seems like every album since is them being in the shadow of that album, and they're deliberately trying to do something different, so they can never escape it, more or less.
It's a testament to them as artists as well, that they want to try something new with each album as well. That you don't, as someone who produces music myself, I don't want to just sit there and tread over old ground because it gets boring.
But I think as well, particularly comparing to some of the earlier stuff as well, is like there's like more electronic sounds in this. There's a lot more experimentation with electronics. I think at one point, Lindsey Buckingham does something to his voice, and people assumed that it was either Stevie Nicks or Christy McVie that was singing, when in fact it was him, just voice pitching. I can't remember what song that was on, but I remember reading about that.
That's interesting. Maybe there's a whole song that I imagined wasn't him. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, well, to be fair, I mean, there's like machine AI which you can kind of make songs that sound like singers that are deceased, singers that are deceased and stuff. in terms of the kind of creative aspect of this and how the band was as well, there's an interesting quote from Buckingham, which I think kind of directed his viewpoint of this album. Staying honest and staying creatively alive is very tricky in a commercial business. You're trying hard to hold on to a certain idealism and not succumb to becoming a parody of oneself. Are you trying to flex your muscles creatively, or are you trying to sell records? In my mind, it was pretty much clear cut. There was no middle ground. And as I was mentioning earlier about the kind of like they were deliberately not doing trying to do rooms again. Yeah. Buckingham from this Lindsey Buckingham from the Go was saying like, no, he's like saying, okay, yeah, as much as money would be nice to have, he'd much rather have something that he's proud of, that the bands can be proud of, and say, yeah, we tried something different. So and
I think the audience, whoever your audience is, the record buying public or fans and things like that, they can recognize when something feels authentic from the artists, when they're actually trying to be creative, when it's like, yeah, I am pushing myself. I don't want to retread old ground because I want to flex my creative muscles and do that. Yeah,
and this article after that quote mentions that Buckingham felt he had won this battle with Tusk. The easy option for Fleetwood Mac would have been to make another Rumours. Instead, Buckingham spiked the Tusk album with weird left field songs such as the new wave influence of That Funny and the bizarre title track. A precedent was set by Tusk, Fleetwood explains. Lindsey could say, I want to do this in the framework of Fleetwood Mac, without pissing everyone off. Buckingham loved the dichotomy in Tusk, the contrast between his songs and Steve's and Christie's. And the article then goes on about a bit about that. But then Buckingham then says he felt that the band's next album, Mirage, was too lightweight, lacking the experimental edge of Tusk, and that nagging feeling returned to him as Tango In The Night was being completed. Buckingham had written many other songs for the album. In addition, the songs he recorded solo remained mostly untouched. So, these songs, Fleetwood said, were very sculpted. All we did was rip some drum machines off and put drums on. So, yeah, and here, yes, this was the bit I was on about here. One trick of Buckingham's in Big Love was especially brilliant. For the song's climax, he used the variable speed oscillators on his voice to create the effect of a male and female in a state of sexual excitement. The love grunts, he called them. It was odd that so many people wondered if it was Stevie on there with me, he said a little disingenuously. But in fact, it was just him. So he's talking about the sound, isn't he? When he crescendos to Big Love, yeah. Which is and that song Big Love is a great way to kick off the album. It's it's a really sort of if I can say this, it's a man swinging his dick around in musical form. Yes. He's there going. One of the lyrics says, "I wake up but only to F word." You know, it's literally like I'm putting myself out there. I'm being the alpha. That's what the song is all about. Being a player. It's a great way. And when they do it live, they do the song very differently. It's just with a guitar, and it's a lot faster. And it's that's on one of the live albums, and one of the greatest hits as well, I believe. Yeah, I think as we kind of naturally move to talk about the songs, I'll stay on Big Love for a second because there's a Rolling Stone interview where Buckingham has said that it was about a guy who was kind of a lonely guy on a big hill in a house, kind of hanging there by himself. When I look back on it now, I'm still living on that same hill, but in a new house, but with a family, from a whole different perspective. So the song has taken on a kind of irony. So, so like he got kind of like almost like a lonely bachelor living on his own, kind of like, as you said, swinging his dick around, which is... Yeah. Sorry to put that in people's minds. I honestly didn't expect to say that. It's not the worst thing that people have said on this podcast. But then a quite interesting thing that he looks back on it now and he says that, okay, yeah, I can kind of feel it's still in that same position, but in a different kind of way, in a different perspective on life anyway. So that's the Big Love, the introduction to the album. So with Big Love out of the way, if we look at some of the other songs on the album, which other songs would jump out to you that particularly, or at least the next one you want to talk about? Yeah, you know what? This is like picking a favourite child. It's very difficult for me, but I'm going to do my best. I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure there are days where kids are like, no, I prefer your brother to you. At this very moment in time, I do not prefer you. I think parents just don't want to admit it. It's like it's a little
like being honest about your favourite child then,
Yes.
rather than having one. Honestly, I honestly never felt like a favourite. But yeah, I think literally the next song, Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is a really wistful, it's Stevie Nicks vocal, she co-wrote it. If I ever live to see the Seven Wonders, I'll take a path to the rainbow's end. I'll never live to match the beauty again. And it's all about if you never see someone again, but they're thankful for the time that they had. It's quite wistful. It's quite sort of, you know, you touch my hand all the way down to Emmeline, which was her mishearing a lyric and actually thinking that's what it was, but it actually made sense. I don't know what Emmeline is, but all the way down, that's it. And it's really good. It's contrast. It's straight after Big Love. It comes down. It just changes the mood entirely. And I think that Seven Wonders has become one of their calling card songs as well. It's become like one of the songs that even if you didn't know it was Fleetwood Mac, you'll probably know the song.
Yeah, I think I quite like the idea that it's like a breakup song that's not your kind of pop punk emo version of a breakup song where it's like where you kind of like are like insulting the person who's like it's more of a case like, okay, there's this period in my life that's now finished, but I'm going to assess what's happened, and it might have been bad that it ended, but there are things to take from that was nice to look back on. And then,
it's a thank you for the memories song, really, isn't
yeah.
it? It's like, don't cry because it ended, smile because it happened. It's one of those in song form for me.
Yeah, I think, and it's particularly when you think this is perhaps after Stevie Nicks has gone through rehab as well. So I don't know. I don't know if she was completely clean and sober from then on after she left, or how long this was from then. But when you think about that, she's made the effort to try and become a better, healthier person from that. You can kind of feel that mindset going into this, particularly trying to take the positive from things as well. So
she's probably done the 12 steps and become this transformed, a much better person thanks to the Betty Ford Clinic. Yeah. So which song do you want to talk about next? Okay, not that I'm going to sit here and go through the track listing, but the next one is the next track on the album, which is Everywhere. Like you said, you recognise this from a dance remix that came out in, I believe, the early 2000s. I Want to Be With You Everywhere. This is a straightforward love song. It's sung by, I've forgotten her name.
Christine McVie.
I always forget. Yeah. It's sung by Christine McVie, and again, this is one of those. It's a classic Fleetwood Mac song that a lot of people know. Again, even if they didn't know that it was Fleetwood Mac, like I say, this is a straightforward love song. This is like, I'm besotted with you, and this is how I want to. This is someone who I want to spend the rest of my life with, or it could be anything like that. I want to be with you everywhere. I just don't want to be away from you at all, and that's the thing.
I mean, yeah, it's not overly complex in its lyrical themes and stuff. It's very simple, very basic, but it's also very nice. And it's kind of really nice. And I've referenced this podcast a lot. There's a podcast called The Naughty Snorty, when they go through the kind of the noughties, the top 10, so the noughties and stuff. And there's a phrase that Scott McGurty, one of the hosts, uses called intro juice, where it's like whenever there's like a strong opening. And I love the opening. I love the intro to Everywhere. It's that kind of, I don't know what it is. Is it a synth? Is it a synth that's going really fast? It's like a twinkly star effect, but I'm not sure what the instrument is.
Yeah, it is. It's two synths, or it's a synth split into two different sounds.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there's the chords on it. There's the chord and there's a that'll be a synthesizer probably. Yeah. It's got to be.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's one of those things as well. I think it's one of those songs that the intro is quite unique, that you'll hear it and you'll immediately know what song it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've always loved that intro stuff, and particularly like about an hour before we started recording, I was driving home from work and listened to the album. I noticed that those similar sounds are actually playing near the end of Seven Wonders, or at least the same kind of synth sound. So, and whether that was because, I don't know, Lindsey Buckingham had the instrument in his house and he wanted to try and get his money's worth out of it, or whether it was a deliberate choice to try and seed those sounds in ready for everywhere. I quite like
continuity.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. I thought it was really good, and and it's a lovely song, and it was one of the ones that I was aware of again because I thought it was I didn't realise it was a cover. So where else do you want to go into next?
I'm going to say Isn't It Midnight, which it's the third to last track on the album. And now Isn't It Midnight is this album was released in 1987, and it's typical of rock music in 1987. It's quite it's a little bit Highway to the Danger Zone. It's a little bit Pat Benatar. It's got that sort of driving sound to it, but with Fleetwood Mac's own spin on it. Not a lot to say about the lyrical content, Isn't It Midnight on the Other Side of the Road? It's like, do you remember the face of a pretty girl? It might be about, again, just going out there and spreading your seed. I don't know. But it's just an energizing song that I really enjoy. And it's a nice change of pace compared to the songs that surround it on the album as well.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And again, it's one of the songs where there's like interplay between the vocalists, interplay between the vocalists and stuff. And I always just think it's nice for them because it could have been too easy for them to just say, okay, here's like a track of, and they could just probably, and I think there's probably been other albums from other bands that's in this where you feel like you just got the best parts of 3 solo albums mixing together with no crossover. So like so you end up with like a very condensed version. I don't know, the Love Below and Speaker Box in Outcast, but with Fleetwood Mac, where it's like there's hardly any crossover, but there's plenty of crossover in this, and it's quite nice to remember that there are a band and they do kind of work together. With this as well, so I do quite like the interplay between that. While we're here, I do want to. While we're here, I want to quickly interject and just mention. I didn't know whether this is going to be a song that you mentioned, but I want to briefly mention Tango in the Night, the title track itself. Purely because there's a point I want to make about the whole album as a whole, and it was only when listening to this for it was like the second or third listen. It might have been like early today actually. I noticed that this kind of builds to that kind of really long, not really long, but the kind of guitar solo at the end and to a fade out, and the album's got quite a few of them. And I remember listening to that going, oh, this is quite nice, and I'm not bored. And I went to go and check the track listings, and the track listings are quite tight actually. There's hardly anything that's over 4 minutes long. And I'm quite amazed that, again, this is me and my long song, my long song phobia kicking in. But I quite appreciate that they don't try and string out these.
There's no self-indulgence in that aspect at all. Not in this album. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't this in the era of Queen when Bohemian Rhapsody was 8 minutes long or something.
Yeah, and you had like Meatloaf and all these kind of like metal or harder rock bands trying to like doing stuff, and or perhaps slightly closer towards Fleetwood Mac, where you can probably argue like Led Zeppelin or something, where there's the psychedelic. Well, but they went more psychedelic. But even though Fleetwood Mac were probably from that era, and perhaps I'm assuming their earlier stuff might have been a lot more like that. They never gained that habit of just trying to go on for these odysseys, which some people might like. But I'm glad they don't go down that route, because it means all the songs are kind of tight. They don't overstay their welcome, and they, particularly with this track as well. On the Wolf Alice album episode last year. Yeah, it'll be last year because this will be on the Wolf Alice album last year. I mentioned about that album kind of manages to be able to work and ride through tension and payoff and resolution. And I think Tango in the Night has that kind of same effect, or is like an early example of that, where it kind of like builds and builds and builds to that kind of guitar solo at the end, and you listen to it and it earns that guitar solo, and it's just nice to kind of reach through that, and it's a great way to end a song. So
yeah, Caroline and Tango in the Night both have a lot of toms in the drums, a lot of mad drum hits. That's probably not a great way of explaining it. But, it's very drum heavy. Lots of toms that are just bringing not quite a tribal sound, but a sort of that sort of feel to it.
Yeah. I think that might be part of me is thinking whether that's just Mick Fleetwood just making sure that the drums are noticed, because like just the drums are noticed. Just remember whose name's in the band name, pal. Yeah. Because but I know what you mean as well. There's like, but again, like you can feel all the elements coming together, and considering that, and I can't think off the top of my head, and anyone listening, feel free to let me know if I'm missing any. I can't think of many bands where the leaders or the main figureheads or the spearhead head of the bands are not the vocalists, or at least not the bassist and the drummer. The bassist and the drummers are usually the ones
they're in the background usually, aren't they? More in the background. The guitarists and vocalists tend to stick together. Bassists and drummers and bassists, tend to stick together as kind of the rhythm and bass section of a band, don't they? That's a very fair point, and they're front and center. It's the name of the band, you know. Yeah,
and it's kind of weird. Like, I mean, as we was just talking, I was trying to think of examples, and I'm like, okay, I know Bono and the Edge, but I can't remember the other two. Guns N' Roses, there was Axl Rose and Slash, and the only one I can think of, and it's not even their band anymore. The only other drummer I can think of was Dave Grohl, but then he wasn't the leader of that. He wasn't the front person of that band. So yeah,
obviously Dave Grohl was the drummer of Nirvana, but was he well known before the Foo Fighters came about? Was he? I don't know. He was. Yeah.
It was probably because he was a member of Nirvana, and then suddenly like, oh god, the drummer can sing. But
Phil Collins as a drummer.
Was he the main creative force in Genesis?
Well, he was the second lead. Exactly. He wasn't even the original lead singer, was he? So I just don't know.
I mean, if anyone's listening, I'll be very interested to find any more examples. So feel free to tweet me at Pick a Disc, or comment on Instagram or something. Because I'm quite interested to find any more examples, because I can't think of any. Because the ones we just talked about, I don't think are the same as Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, because I don't think they sing. I don't think they sing at all. I think they just play the bass and the drums, unless I'm missing other things. But yeah. So is there any other songs that you want to mention before we move on?
I think I'm going to say "Welcome to the Room, Sarah." Now this is a very chilled out little track. It's about, I believe it's one of Stevie's friends ended up with one of the other band members. It could have been Mick, I'm not sure, but she was called Sarah, and it's simply "Welcome to the Room, Sarah." It's like, welcome to the chaos. I think that's basically what she's saying. It's like, this is what you've got in store for you, honey. We're going to just welcome to the ride.
Okay, that's an interesting take on that. Because one of the takes I've seen was that Stevie Nicks went to the Betty Ford Centre, but she went in under the name Sarah.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I read the account that I've just given you, so it might be. I don't know.
Yeah. So apparently this was supposed to be unless again there's two different meanings you can take from it, but apparently this was about her 30-day experience in rehab at the Betty Ford Clinic. So. But I think it's Stevie Nicks' best song on the album. I really liked it.
You prefer it to Seven Wonders?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I like it to. I think because I think it's nice. It catches the name as well. I think because again, there's a couple of times in the album there's names mentioned, particularly like, for example, Caroline. So like whenever the name's mentioned, and again it's like as you said, it's like the Taylor Swift of the late 80s, where like, oh, you got all this personal stuff, and people are trying to decode what people are talking
Caroline?
About. Yes.
Who is Caroline?
Sarah. Yeah, who's Sarah? And
I think Stevie is Caroline. I honestly think that song, she's so crazy, she's so stagey, so attractive, so reactive. Honestly think that song is about Stevie Nicks, but I haven't actually read up about the actual history of that. I'm sorry, I sound like I don't have much knowledge here on one of my favourite albums, to be honest with you. But that's my theory anyway.
Okay. I just always said that I have a sneaky look at Genius to see what Genius says. So apparently Lindsey Buckingham wrote this song about his girlfriend of 8 years, Carol Ann Harris, whom began dating immediately after breaking up with Stevie Nicks. So
really? Oh, it's about her then. He obviously has a type then, doesn't he?
Yeah, he definitely does. And I think finally as well, I think the one I want to mention before we definitely move on is the other one that I was familiar with, which was Little Lies. Sweet Little Lies, as I always thought it was called. It turns out it's just called Little Lies. So I really like this song. It's you can tell it was a single. And I think it was actually apparently it was Fleetwood Mac's last top 10 hit.
Was it?
Apparently so, yeah. According to Genius, this was their last top 10 in 1987. Wow. But but you can tell it's got kind of radio friendliness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the chorus is quite catchy, and built for radio, I think.
It's got quite simple rhyming in the chorus. It's got some repetition. It's like you say, it's radio ready, and it was a very good decision to release it as a single.
I think it's just it's the catchiness of the refrain. And kind of catchiness of the refrain that goes through it. And again, when you think about it, and back then, not knowing the history of kind of Fleetwood Mac and the tendency to think, it's about each other and stuff, it feels very, very Fleetwood Mac in terms of lyrical content.
Personal, doesn't it? It feels like they've actually put their heart and soul into writing a song about, I'm going to write a song dissing you now, and then I'm going to sing it with you behind me again. So it's very on brand.
So that was Tango in the Night, which ended up being the band's second highest performing album after the other one. And said that Tusk and Mirage were big sellers in key territories that hadn't matched their predecessor's success, and Tango in the Night was a worldwide hit with several singles all over the world. The before I'm going to look at some of the weekly charts and the year-end charts. So the weekly charts, it went number 1 in Sweden and the UK. Went number 2 in Holland. In West Germany, it went second. 5th in Australia, 6th in Canada, 7th in Switzerland. Got to 7th in the Billboard 200 in the US, 9th in New Zealand, and got to 14th in Japan. So and like in the year-end charts, it was the 5th best-selling album in the UK for the whole of 1987. I'm not actually sure. I'm just curious, which albums beat it in 1987. Oh, okay. So in 1987, I might quiz you a second. Do you think you might be able to guess which 4 albums in 1987? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Did the Human League have an album that did well?
Not in that year, I don't think, or they're not on there. But
Mode.
No. I mean, I think one of them you probably wouldn't get because it was That's What I Call Music. 10 was number 4.
Okay.
Yeah. And the top 3, I think number 3 was Whitney by Whitney Houston. Number 2 was The Joshua Tree by U2. And number one was the album Bad by Michael Jackson.
Oh, of course.
So, yeah, I was trying to remember. 1987, that's when that came out. But, but, I mean, still, it did very well. It got to, I think, in 1988, he got top of the Dutch album chart in terms of performance, and he got to 7th in the UK for 1988. So it was still selling well into the next year. And in the 80s, it was the 7th best-selling album overall in the UK for the whole of the 1980s.
There you go then. So it is an album with longevity in the 80s.
Yes. And in terms of sales, it did really well. Worldwide, it sold 50 million. The States alone, it was 3 times platinum with 3 million, 8 times platinum in the UK, 2 times platinum in Germany, 4 in Australia. Went gold in the US for the videos, and yeah, so it did pretty well. And surprisingly, the Wikipedia article doesn't have much in terms of its reception, which is interesting. But yeah,
if it was 15 million total, I believe that actually outsold Bad in the end. Then I'm sure Thriller didn't sell that much either. As much as
I think worldwide, I think Thriller did about. I got 37 the last time I checked.
Really.
I'm just now again live research. I'm just curious to see how much that sold in the end. 35 million worldwide.
Oh really?
So 20 million more. So yeah, and I think out of curiosity, I'm just gonna check. This makes great radio, doesn't it?
You can edit it later. It's fine.
That's why I'm not actually on the Thriller. Okay, worldwide Thriller sold 70 million.
Really? Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. A few more then.
Yeah.
Just a few more.
twice as much as Bad. So yeah, and I'm not gonna. For anyone listening, I'm not gonna talk about Michael Jackson for anymore. But so it did really well. It did well. That's the thing. So, have you ever seen Fleetwood Mac live?
I have not. I have always wanted to see Fleetwood Mac live, and next time they're doing a tour, I'm going to call up my mum and I'm going to ask her if she wants to go and see Fleetwood Mac live with me, because I really do want. Might bring my boyfriend along as well if he wants to. Tag along.
Because I'm pretty sure they had a tour that was postponed because of reasons. Because I'm just going to check now. Fleetwood Mac in concert with Neil Flynn, Mick Fleetwood, Stevie Nicks, Christy McVie, John McVie, and Mike Campbell. So they are going to be touring again, but without Lindsey Buckingham, because it's Tuesday. He's been like thrown out again, I think. So I think they are potentially playing live, but again, I don't know if they'll ever play with Buckingham again, because he must have been thrown out for like the 4th or 5th time at this point. Or is it?
When did he get thrown out? What's going on?
I think he was either thrown out or left. I mean, he left again.
I'd imagine he chose to leave his own volition. I don't know. Who did you say was in there that wasn't originally in the band?
Yeah.
Who replaced him?
I think it was because it was the two, because I think the Neil Flynn and Mike Campbell
from Crowded House.
I think so, yeah, and Mike Campbell, but I think they might have replaced him when he left at the end of this album, because before they started touring this album, Buckingham left because he couldn't cope with the recording aspect and dealing with them and stuff. And there's in that same article, apparently Stevie Nicks was saying that at one point when he said he was leaving, there was physical alteration between the two of them, between Buckingham and Nicks, and apparently chasing after him. He threw a stool or something at her, apparently. In 2018, Buckingham was fired from the band and replaced by Mike Campbell, formerly of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Neil Flynn of Crowded House. Yeah, so yeah, I would be very surprised if Buckingham is suddenly appearing on those live dates again. So
it speaks volumes that they needed 2 people to replace him, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's more or less the exact same quote that Mick Fleetwood said. That he said he'd say something that I had to hire 2 people to replace Buckingham. So yeah, I mean, I've not seen them live at all. I've not seen them live at all, but I might. I mean, it'd be nice to, but I don't know. I think of the gig ticket prices and my head hurts at the potential.
They're going to be hundreds, aren't they? They're just going to be ridiculous. But, it's one of those once-in-a-lifetime things that you'd ever do to see legends like this, in my opinion.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's only 50, because I think they're promoting 50 years of something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, so people have listened to Tango In The Night and want to listen to more Fleetwood Mac, where would you recommend they go next?
You know what? Just try the greatest hits and see what, and then from there go on to which albums you think you'd like. Rumours is the obvious classic album, and you'll know 80% of Rumours straight away. The song Tusk is, in my opinion, one of their strongest songs from the album Tusk. And yeah, when it's Rumours, make sure you listen to the special edition. Also, it's got Silver Springs on it anyway, which was originally just a single by itself. And yeah, that's it really. And listen to Stevie Nicks' solo albums as well.
Yeah, so plenty of homework when it comes to Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, so I mean, I think the only other album of theirs I've heard of is Rumours, as I mentioned before, and I'm not going to spend too long on it because we could be here for 3 hours just talking about the making of Rumours before you're talking about we start talking about the actual concepts and stuff. But yeah, if you've never listened to it before, find one of thousands of articles about the background of that album, then listen to the album, and then wonder how the hell not one of them killed each other. how they managed
to make through it.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact they came back for 3 other albums is ridiculous considering. But yeah, I've heard this band and that particular time as being lightning in a bottle, where it's something that's just happened at the right time, at the right place, with the right people. Because I think the personalities involved, anyone else, they would not finish the album. But
no.
Yeah, and the fact that those 5 people was able to do the same thing again 3 more times in succession is mind blowing. So,
I mean, it took a couple of years out every now and in between
to cool off.
To recover.
Yeah, it's like psyching themselves up. Okay, I've got to be in the room with them again. But yeah, so and we're at the end of our conversation, Peter. So just 2 more things to ask you. The first one is the most important question, which is the song of the playlist. So for people who've not listened to this before, what this is the song for the Spotify playlist. I'm going to ask Peter to pick 1 song from this album to go on to the playlist. I cannot veto it, so whatever he says goes. So Peter, which song are you going to pick to be put onto the playlist?
Might not be a surprise. I'm going to pick 7 Wonders.
I was going to guess that, but you know what? I was going to not steal the limelight. 7 Wonders. So 7 Wonders joins the playlist and is the first song from the 4th year. Of like the start of year 4 of Pick a Disc, which I think Fleetwood Mac is joined like I seem to start each year with a kind of almost legacy artist. I opened up the podcast with U2. Last year was David Bowie. This year it's Fleetwood Mac. The second year it was a mixture. It was the Quentin Tarantino Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Hollywood soundtrack, but there's quite a few kind of like 60s artists in there and stuff. So yeah, so it's nice to kick off 2022 with a bang with Fleetwood Mac and stuff, and it's been great to actually listen to another album that's not Rumours actually. So so if people want to find you or the work that you do in your DJing, where can they find you?
Oh, okay. So my DJ and producer name is Pollarik, Pollarik. I'm on all good streaming services and some of the really bad ones too. So you'll probably recognise where that quote comes from, where that paraphrase comes from. But yes, I am Pollarik on Twitter, feel free to follow. Spotify. I do a house music podcast called Housework.
Okay.
Under my DJ name again, and I do various DJ gigs around Manchester as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if people check those out, part of me might try Housework, but my I will admit that I'm not much a fan of house music, if I'm honest, but I'll try and listen to an episode at least, just to.
It's generally stuff with old samples in it and disco type house. It's like house, deep house, and new disco, I always say. But so it's not just house, but it's called Housework.
Okay, Okay, I'll try. I'll check it. I'll try and check it out anyway. But yeah. So Peter, thank you ever so much for coming on. Thank you for letting me dip into Fleetwood Mac, into parts of their careers that I'm not familiar with. So yeah, I was going to say thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
You've been listening to Pick a Disc, and I've been your host, Matthew Latham. Our theme music is Pump by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Pick a Disc is hosted by the We Made This podcast network, and you can find them on www.spreaker.com/user/WeMadeThis. You can find the Pick a Disc show site on www.spreaker.com/show/pickadisc. You can find us on all the usual social media type places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can also email us on pickadisc@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming. Elsewhere on We Made This. Academy Watch.
I saw West Side Story actually the other day, and I didn't really connect with it. So, some I like and some I won't. But generally, I like the idea of a musical. Disney films, the animated Disney films, tend to enjoy them.
Of course. Are you a La La Land person? Because I was definitely a La La pet.
I hate La La Land. I just could not stand it.
Wow. We can't be friends anymore. I'm just gonna hang on. How do I turn this thing off?
Yeah. I've lost a lot of friends over this opinion, but I hate it.
Garfield is the best Spider-Man, and La La Land is shit. Like what?
I just like to be controversial.
We dig music.
But yeah, just missed out on my list this year. There was the Garbage record was great, so I'd Godhead off that.
Yeah, I was surprised that didn't end up on the main.
It was close.
I was surprised to not see it.
Wet Leg, who have released 2 songs so far. There's another one apparently coming out
Terrible
later this week.
name.
Yeah, I can't get behind it. That's what our old history teacher was called, Mr. Wetleg. It's actually Westlake, but apparently he pissed himself once.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a fucking terrible band name, but they're great.
It's like if Wet Leg toured with pissed jeans. Can you imagine?
Right in the childhood.
When I was younger, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man looks way older than I was as a kid.
He looks older than you do now.
Way older than I am, yeah. And that was a constant thing in the cartoons as well. Like in the cartoons, like the 90s one, he looked older. And that was the cartoon I watched when I was younger, was the 90s one. And we would have done that for this show. But as soon as Disney Plus came out, I binge watched it all, and then I encouraged you to watch it.
Yeah, and I've watched it as well.
And then we started the podcast.
And we were like, oh shit, we should have saved it.
That should have been it. And then there was another one with Neil Patrick Harrison, which I probably did.
What, as in Doogie Howser MD?
Yeah, and
Ooh, I'm going to put that on my list.
A Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser MD.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.